The Russian occupiers are in a difficult situation in the Sumy Oblast border region. Their attempt to hold Oleksiivka is resulting in heavy losses. The Russian Z resource, Northern Channel, spoke frankly about this. The channel described the situation in Oleksiivka as very dire for the Russian armed forces. The deployment of additional forces to this area has only led to increased losses, not only from the actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, but also from friendly fire. You can show as many videos of repelled attacks as you like, but the Ukrainian Armed Forces are really putting pressure on us. They're really harassing us. It became clear we couldn't get out without reinforcements. They sent several reserves there at once, an airborne battalion from the 810th Brigade, an assault company from the 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment, a couple more units. They reinforced Oleksiivka as best they could. In the heat of the moment, they scooped up everything they could and sent them to patch up the holes. Cooperation, mutual assistance? No, we haven't heard of it. As a result, the fatality rate during the attack on Oleksiivka was very, very high. The channel wrote, he reported a loss of control on this section of the front. Various units of the Russian armed forces are firing at each other. You'll see sooner or later, Oleksiivka will have to be surrendered anyway. But how many of our men will have to die to make sure of this? That's a question for the command. Stated Northern Channel. The channel stated that Russian troops are experiencing supply problems in the Besalovka and Yunakovka areas and are also suffering heavy losses in the Novi Put area. The Z blogger claims that Ukrainian drones are preventing Russian troops from breaking through Ukrainian lines in Novi Put and that the Russian army is amassing forces for attacks on Rizovka. According to him, Putin's airborne troops left Besalovka without completely clearing the village, and only one company of the 1st Battalion of the Russian Aerospace Forces entered the village after 3 airborne companies left. Units of the 1st Battalion of the Russian Armed Forces suffer daily losses and receive no artillery support. Putin's army cannot enter Besalovka because Ukrainian troops control the nearby forest belts and rely on drones. Units of the 3rd Battalion of the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment and units of the 810th Marine Brigade are operating in the Oleksiivka area, but the 3rd Battalion of the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment has only about 70 soldiers left and is suffering heavy losses. Units of the 30th Motorized Rifle Brigade often attack in a herd, while units of the 810th Marine Brigade carefully attack in small groups and suffer fewer losses. Recall Ukrainian units launched a counteroffensive in areas where the Russians had managed to break through in the summer. Small enemy assault groups advanced deeper into the territory near Dobropilya, capturing a chain of villages in certain areas and creating salients that threatened the stability of the forward line. To break this momentum, the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command sent platoons and tank units to recapture villages, particularly Grusko and Vesyolo. While the operation in Grusko went smoothly, the battle in Vesyolo proved more intense. After street fighting, house clearings and drone strikes, a unit led by a soldier with the call sign Tarantino killed about 10 enemy troops there without losing any personnel. After that, we went inside and began clearing the area. Every house, bush and basement, said the platoon commander from Tarantino. His comrade, Major Yevgeny Ligurko of the 93rd Kholodny Yar Brigade, emphasized, they have had some local successes. This doesn't significantly change the overall picture. The Russians don't have a clear plan. They're moving forward by inertia. Today, according to Atseh guerrilla movement founders, the movement numbers reached 2,500 members. Some carry out attacks and sabotage. Others gather information about the enemy army both in the occupied territories and within Russia. Doha, one of the movement's coordinators, said this in an interview with Telegraph. He said that guerrilla movement deeply integrated into the Russian rear structures, quite deeply. The Russians don't even realize how deep. Our agents are present in Russian army units on every front line, from Sumy to Kherson. We also have our own informants in almost every occupation administration. So, no event or decision goes unnoticed. In fact, we have stable and productive cooperation. We regularly share intelligence from our agents with the SDS, and they use it when planning strikes. For example, there was a recent strike on an oil depot in Luhansk. Our agents had conducted reconnaissance of that oil depot several weeks beforehand, but we always emphasize that we are not part of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. He said that their most successful operation was the destruction of the large landing ship Minsk and the submarine Rostov-on-Don in Sevastopol. This occurred on September 13, 2023. The ships were hit by cruise missiles. At that time, our agents conducted real-time reconnaissance and on-site adjustments. But our approach is systematic. Over the course of the movement's existence, we've carried out hundreds of acts of sabotage and even more civil resistance. We believe it's best to carry out small but continuous sabotage operations so that the enemy never feels safe and has no time to relax, he said. Doha spoke about destroying the Crimean Bridge. We're not currently planning such a sabotage, but even if we were, we'd hardly say so. We believe that with proper planning and preparation, anything is possible. Of course, our movement isn't strong enough to destroy the Crimean Bridge, but we're ready to do our part. We have people who would be happy to help make it happen when the time comes, he added. He said that the Russian army is very large with various units, each with its own specific characteristics and idiosyncrasies. There are highly motivated and professional units. Among them, a very large number of fighters sincerely believe they are fighting against Western influence for the Russian world, and so on. Of course, many are motivated by money. It's no secret that salaries in the Russian army are high relative to their standard of living. This allows Russians to replenish their personnel even in the face of significant losses. Yes, the Russian army is suffering heavy losses, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for them because, as mentioned above, they found a way to replenish them. There's a problem with military equipment, especially tanks and guns. The enemy is also experiencing certain logistical problems on the front lines, and we're working to make this an even bigger problem for them. However, it should be noted that the level of training and discipline in the Russian army is quite high, he told